My wife betrayed me with her creative director, trashing our marriage as predictable, so I uncovered their affair and let her face a public unraveling she never saw coming. You ever have a stretch of time where everything just clicks? That was my life for a while. Felt like one long Sunday afternoon. Familiar, warm, maybe a little boring in the best way. We had our routines, our quiet joys. I never thought to question any of it. Why would I? My name's Adrian. I'm 33 years old, living just outside Ann Arbor, Michigan. Dana and I bought a modest little house 5 years ago, the kind with ivy creeping up the brick and a backyard just big enough for tomatoes and rosemary. She always said it was her dream spot. I believed her. We had our traditions. Sunday mornings we'd ride our bikes out to this little coffee stand by the river trail, sit under the same tree and people watch. Tuesdays were co-op garden nights, where we dug through dirt side by side, her humming along to whatever playlist was drifting out of someone's Bluetooth speaker. Fridays, homemade sushi night. She had this goofy way of slicing avocado like she was on a cooking show, narrating every step in a fake British accent. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. I trusted her. Completely. There wasn't even a lock on her phone because we never needed one. I knew her coffee order, the way she took her tea, even the weird way she alphabetized our spice rack. We were solid. Then she started changing. It was slow at first. Little things. Her phone, which used to sit forgotten on the counter for hours, now never left her side. She started texting more, smiling down at the screen in that distracted way like the world around her had dimmed. Once, I asked what was so funny, and she just said, "Oh, nothing. Just something from work." That didn't seem like a big deal. People change. I reminded myself of that. She started pulling away from our rituals too. Bike rides were too early, sushi night became too messy, and the garden? It's just not sparking joy anymore. She laughed when she said it, trying to make it sound like a joke, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I tried not to overthink it. Told myself maybe she was just tired. Work had been demanding lately, or so she said. More meetings, new projects, deadlines. I brought her tea in the evenings like I always had, tried to pull her into conversations about things we used to care about. Movie trailers, garden plans, that one ugly tomato we always rooted for, but her replies got shorter. She was in the room, but not really there. Then came the nights where she'd sit scrolling for hours, her screen lighting up her face while I read beside her, pretending not to notice the way she angled it away from me. I didn't panic. Not then. Because when you've built a life on trust, the last thing you want to believe is that it's breaking. I thought maybe she was just going through something personal, self-discovery, a mood shift. Everyone goes through phases, right? But somewhere deep down, something started to tighten in my chest. A quiet voice I kept ignoring. Until one night, she looked up from her phone, smiled faintly and said, "I think I'm changing, Adrian. I don't want to be stuck." That was the first time I realized she might already be gone. The next shift came with a stack of books and a new vocabulary I didn't recognize. Dana started quoting these authors, people I'd never heard of, who talked about evolutionary partnerships and soul expansion through discomfort. I remember her sliding a book across the table one morning, right between my coffee mug and the cereal box. "You should read this," she said. "It challenges the traditional model of possession in relationships." I blinked at the title, Sacred Unions, Sacred Freedom. The cover had two people standing back to back, both looking at the sky like it owed them something. "What's this about?" I asked. "Just a new way of thinking," she said, her tone light, like we were discussing yoga mats or a new restaurant. "I've been listening to these seminars too. There's a whole philosophy around deconstructing monogamy as a default." I laughed, thinking she was teasing me, but she wasn't smiling. The thing about Dana, she used to roll her eyes at stuff like that. She once joked that the only alignment she needed was with a well-made pillow. Now she was talking about decentralized intimacy and energy flows between creative equals. Meanwhile, I was still making the grocery list. She started dressing differently too. More dramatic. Sleek cuts, plunging necklines, bold lipstick. I complimented her at first. I mean, she looked amazing. But when I asked if she was trying something new, She brushed it off. It's for confidence, she said, smoothing down the front of her blouse. I need to show up bigger at work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But confidence didn't explain why she'd redo her makeup before leaving for just another Thursday night mixer. She worked at this high-end interior design firm in downtown Detroit. Fancy clients, big contracts, modern aesthetics I couldn't afford but still pretended to understand. I'd been to a couple of their events, wine, ambient lighting, soft jazz humming in the background. Not my scene, but I went because she asked me to. That stopped too. They're really for networking, she said one night, grabbing her keys and checking her lipstick in the mirror. You wouldn't have fun. I stepped closer, brushing invisible lint from her shoulder. I don't need fun. I just like being around you. She smiled, but it was tight. I need space to grow, Adrian. You get that, right? She was always gone now. Out late. Mixers, creative brainstorms, artist salons. When she came home, she smelled like gin and expensive cologne that wasn't hers. Her phone stayed face down, always on silent. I started noticing a name that popped up more and more in her stories, Kel. Her new creative director. Oh, Kel says this, or Kel showed me that. Always with this wide-eyed admiration. I had never met the guy, but I already hated him. He sounded like a performance piece. Tall, bold, too many rings on his fingers, probably used phrases like vibe congruence. Dana's face lit up when she talked about him. The way she used to light up around me. One night, I made her favorite risotto and picked up her favorite wine. She came home late and barely touched it. Rough day? I asked. She looked at her phone, thumb hovering. Not really. Just distracted. I sat across from her, listening to the silence stretch between us. I realized then I was no longer in the frame. Just behind it, watching her become someone I didn't recognize. And she didn't even seem to notice I was missing. It started creeping into our conversations like mold behind wallpaper. Dana didn't come at me with a full manifesto all at once. She'd drop it in little doses, casual, almost academic, like she was educating me for my own good. We've been conditioned to think that monogamy is natural, she said one night while folding laundry. But what if that's just cultural programming? I stared at her from the bed, a sock half crumpled in my hand. What are you saying? You want an open relationship now? She shrugged, but it wasn't a denial. I'm just exploring ideas. Expanding my understanding of what love means. Her language had shifted. Everything was about exploration and emotional range now. What used to be affection was now a theoretical discussion. She'd talk about how humans weren't meant to be the entire village for their partners. That true intimacy required letting go of control. I didn't remember signing up for a TED Talk every time we argued. And Kel God, his name became a regular guest in our house. Kel says jealousy is just an attachment wound, she said once, stirring her tea like she was quoting scripture. It's not about love, it's about fear. Is Kel a therapist now? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. No, she said with a half smile. But he's done a lot of inner work. He's very evolved. That was the word she kept using. Evolved. If I didn't agree with her new views, I wasn't growing. If I questioned her sudden admiration for this guy who clearly had a thing for charisma and necklaces, I was insecure. If I asked for something as basic as, hey, can we talk about what's going on between us? I was clinging to old paradigms. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was a symbol. Of convention. Of expectation. Of the patriarchal possession model of love, as she once put it. I'm not your possession, Adrian, she said during one of our long, meandering arguments. You don't get to own my body or my time. I never said I did, I replied, rubbing my eyes. I'm your husband. I just thought that meant something. It does, she said. But maybe not the same thing it used to. Then came Layla, Dana's new best friend. A life coach. Of course. Layla floated into our lives like a cloud of sandalwood and unsolicited advice. She wore flowing skirts, talked about her moon cycles, and referred to breakups as soul contractions. She and Dana would sit in the backyard for hours, sipping turmeric lattes and speaking in a code I couldn't crack. She's helping me unlearn toxic enmeshment, Dana told me one night, like she was explaining a medical treatment. And I'm what? The virus? I asked. She didn't answer. Just smiled like I was being childish. Every time I tried to talk seriously, Dana would pivot. Say I was being reactive or that I couldn't see the larger picture. I began questioning myself. Maybe I was traditional. Maybe I was small-minded. Maybe I really didn't get it. But late at night, staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me, a cold truth started to settle in my chest. This wasn't growth. This was erosion. And I was the one dissolving. The thing about suspicion is that once it takes root, everything starts looking like proof. Dana's stories began unraveling in small, irritating ways. A gallery opening on a Tuesday turned into a design panel on Wednesday. A networking brunch somehow overlapped with a yoga retreat. She was slippery with details, vague when I asked follow-up questions. Not outright lies, at least not yet. Just elastic truths. I told myself I was imagining things. But I wasn't. I was seeing them, feeling them. Her phone was always with her now. She used to leave it charging on the nightstand or forget it in the kitchen. Lately, it was practically an extension of her arm. She typed quickly, almost feverishly sometimes, her thumbs dancing like they were writing poetry only she could understand. If I glanced in her direction, she'd angle the screen away, just slightly. A subtle move, but not accidental. One night, we were brushing our teeth in silence when I heard a buzz from her pocket. She checked it immediately, smiling just a little before slipping it back in. I asked who it was, pretending not to care. She didn't even pause. Work. Later, when she stepped out of the room to take a call, I caught a glimpse of the screen before it dimmed. 10:47 p.m. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts circled the ceiling fan like moths. Every late return home, every missed dinner, every deep sigh she thought I didn't hear. It all pointed to something I didn't want to face. The next afternoon, I came home early. Her coat was on the rack, her purse by the door, but she was nowhere in sight. I found her in the shower, music playing, humming to herself. Her phone was on the bathroom counter, unlocked. I stared at it. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it over the water. I hesitated. Then I picked it up. The texts were right there. I didn't even have to dig. Kel, still thinking about last night. You always surprise me. Dana. You bring out parts of me I didn't know were still alive. There were dozens more. Long threads of emotional intimacy, half-flirty banter, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Words like deep connection and shared vibration thrown around like candy. I scrolled until my stomach turned. Then I saw it. A photo. A blurry shot of a rooftop patio, candles flickering, 2 wine glasses, and Dana's hand. Her distinct ring and painted nails, resting on Kel's knee. No caption. None needed. I set the phone down and walked out of the bathroom before the water shut off. That night, when she crawled into bed, I pretended to be asleep. She lay beside me, her breathing steady, unaware that I knew, unaware that something inside me had finally cracked. The next morning, I said nothing. I handed her a coffee like I always did, kissed her cheek on her way out the door. But behind my smile, something cold had taken hold. I didn't trust her anymore. And worse, I didn't even recognize her. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her phone against the wall or confront her in the kitchen. That would have made it too easy for her to flip the script, turn me into the aggressor, the traditional guy who couldn't handle her truth. No, I went still, cold, focused. She had no idea I knew. That was my advantage. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of the texts, photos of the call logs, a spreadsheet of dates and times when her alibis didn't match. I created a secure folder in the cloud and locked it with a password she'd never guess. I even recorded a couple of her phone conversations when she paced the hallway late at night, whispering in that soft, charged voice I used to think was just for me. I made copies of our joint financial documents, bank accounts, property titles, her credit card statements. I started separating my money, bit by bit, opening a new account at a different bank, redirecting my paycheck, freezing unnecessary spending. The whole time I played the part. Loving husband, calm, understanding, endlessly supportive. If she noticed I was quieter than usual, she didn't ask. One afternoon, while she was at one of her collaborative dinners, I reached out to Cassie. Cassie used to work at the same firm Dana did. They weren't exactly friends, more like professional acquaintances, but Dana had always spoken of her with a weird kind of contempt, called her rigid, conventional, jealous of people who lived freely. I'd always wondered what that was about. I found her on LinkedIn, sent a short message, told her I was Dana's husband and had some questions about her former employer. She agreed to meet. Cassie was smart. Sharper than Dana ever gave her credit for. We met at a quiet cafe, and I didn't waste time. I think Kel is more than just a creative director, I said. To my wife. Cassie didn't flinch. Just sipped her coffee and nodded slowly. Yeah, she said. That sounds about right. Turns out, Kel had a reputation. Charismatic, magnetic, full of visionary ideas that made people feel like they were being seen for the first time. Especially women. He doesn't just seduce people, she said. He rewrites their value systems. Makes you feel like questioning him means you're unenlightened. I asked if anything had happened between them. She nodded. A few years ago. Started the same way. Deep talks. After-hours brainstorms. He called it a creative alignment. Then it got physical. She told me about how he strung her along, promising professional growth, emotional breakthroughs, all wrapped in flowery language. When she pushed back, he cut her out of projects, made her feel crazy, gaslit her in meetings. She left the company shortly after. He loves married women, she added. It's part of the thrill for him. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway, watching the lights in our house flicker through the blinds. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was ready. She didn't know it yet, but this story wasn't going to end the way she thought. It was a Tuesday night. She made tea, chamomile with honey, and sat across from me like she was about to break good news. I could tell she'd rehearsed it. Her legs were crossed neatly, her tone practiced. Dana always did her best performances in soft lighting. I want to talk about something, she said, sliding the mug into her hands like she needed it for warmth. Something I've been thinking about a lot. I already knew what was coming. I'd seen the texts, heard the calls, but I played dumb, raised an eyebrow. Sure. What's on your mind? She inhaled like she was centering herself. I think we've outgrown the old definition of marriage, of exclusivity. I want us to explore something different, something expansive. She waited for a reaction. I gave her none. I'm not saying we break up, she added quickly, as if she saw doubt flicker across my face. I love you, Adrian. You're my foundation. But I believe we can be more honest with each other, more open. She said the word open like it had glitter around it, like it was wrapped in silk instead of betrayal. I've been listening to this relationship seminar, she continued, and there's this concept of creative non-monogamy, where both partners get to explore new connections, but stay grounded in their core bond. Creative, I repeated, sipping my coffee. Yes, she said, her face brightening. You could date other people too, if you wanted. It's about growth, evolving, not being confined by old rules. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. You've really thought this through. She reached out and touched my hand. I want this to be a conversation, not a demand. Of course not. And this wouldn't be about anyone in particular? I asked, keeping my voice even. Her eyes didn't flinch. No, it's just a path I feel called to explore. I think we both deserve the freedom to connect with others, if that's what our souls need. I smiled. A small, agreeable smile. You're right. Maybe this is something worth trying. Her shoulders dropped, visibly relieved. She beamed like I just passed a test. Really? If it'll help us grow, I said. I want that too. She kissed me then, long and soft, like she thought she had enlightened me, like we were starting something beautiful. Kissed her back gently, and as she curled up next to me on the couch, talking about boundaries and safe communication, I let her believe it, because the trap she thought she set, she just walked into mine. Took about a week to get everything in place. Cassie didn't hesitate when I asked. She knew what Kel was. She said the idea of exposing him, publicly, personally, whatever it took, was something she'd been waiting years to do. I didn't have to convince her. I just laid out the plan, and she smiled, tapped the table and said, "Let's make it count." We picked a Friday night. I told Dana I'd be working late. She said she might go out too. Some vague drinks with a few people from work. I told her, "Have fun." She kissed me goodbye with that new, detached warmth she'd been perfecting. Cassie showed up around 6. She brought a bottle of wine just like we planned. We didn't pretend it was anything other than a setup. She was easy to talk to, sharp, funny, a little bit angry in a way I understood. We sat on the couch, sipping wine and talking about the old days, about Dana's shift in personality, about Kel's trail of damaged colleagues. Cassie had receipts, too. Names, dates, even old texts from when he tried to manipulate her into creative intimacy. We laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. At 7:41, Dana's car pulled into the driveway. I saw her through the window, walking up the steps with her keys in hand, probably already rehearsing her excuse. She wasn't supposed to be home that early. I leaned back and waited. The door opened. She stepped in and froze. Cassie and I were sitting on the couch, halfway through the bottle, a playlist humming low in the background. Dana's eyes widened like she'd walked into a crime scene. "Hi," she said. Her tone was tight, cold. Her gaze darted between us. "Hey," I said calmly. Cassie stopped by to catch up. Dana blinked. "You're drinking wine with her?" Cassie raised her glass, smiling faintly. "He's an excellent listener." Dana's lips parted, but nothing came out. "Something wrong?" I asked, feigning innocence. She dropped her purse on the floor with more force than necessary. "What the hell is going on?" "Conversation," I said, setting down my glass. "You remember those, right?" She didn't answer. Her hands were clenched. Her voice trembled, barely controlled. "Why is she here?" Cassie stood then. Calm. Steady. "I just thought Adrian should know what Kel's been up to, given how many marriages he's managed to destabilize under the guise of creative mentorship." Dana paled. I stood too. I walked over to the console table, opened the drawer, and pulled out a thick envelope. I dropped it on the coffee table. "What is that?" Dana asked, already backing away. "Screenshots," I said. "Text messages. Photos. Call logs. And a copy of the divorce papers." I thought it'd be easier to hand them over at once. She didn't move. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her face flushed, then went ghost white. "I didn't," she started, but her voice cracked. "You did," I said simply. "And you lied about it. For weeks." Cassie crossed her arms. "Kel's a predator, Dana. You know that now, don't you?" Dana shook her head, eyes glassy. "You tricked me." "No," I said. "You underestimated me." The silence stretched. Dana looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in weeks. And I saw it in her eyes, the realization that she wasn't the enlightened one here. She was just another story. I picked up the envelope and gently placed it in her hands. "You wanted freedom, Dana. Now you've got it." She didn't say a word. Cassie walked to the door. I followed, and we left Dana standing there, shaking, her illusions crumbling right along with her voice. The next morning, Dana called 6 times before noon. I didn't answer a single one. Not the texts, not the voicemails. I needed space, and more importantly, I needed clarity. Not from her, but from a lawyer. By the end of the day, everything was in motion. My attorney filed the divorce paperwork officially. We froze all joint accounts, rerouted mail, and began the process of splitting the assets. Dana's name was removed from everything that mattered. That weekend, I packed her things into boxes. Not to be petty, but to be done. I stacked them by the front door, left her a message that her access to the house would end by Monday. I changed the locks that night. She showed up Sunday morning. Tear-streaked, no makeup, hair in a messy knot. She looked nothing like the woman who used to glide around the house in silk robes talking about sacred embodiment. Her voice cracked before she even said my name. "Please, Adrian. Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. I opened the door just wide enough for her to see the boxes. "Your things are here." She reached out. "I made a mistake. I got lost in something that felt bigger than it was." I raised an eyebrow. "A mistake? You spent months rewriting our marriage into a self-help experiment while screwing your creative director." "That's not a mistake, Dana. That's a decision." She covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook. But I didn't move. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "You already did." I closed the door. Slowly. Quietly. No slam. Just finality. But I wasn't finished, not entirely. Cassie kept her promise. The day after our confrontation, she requested a meeting with Dana and Kel's firm's HR department. She came with screenshots, audio snippets, timelines. Dana might have been a willing participant, but Kel had a pattern, and now there was evidence. 2 other women at the firm came forward within the week. Same story, mentorship twisted into intimacy, boundaries blurred under the veil of creative synergy. The company had no choice but to investigate. By week's end, Kel was suspended. A week later, terminated. The press release didn't name specifics, but the office knew. Everyone knew. His Instagram account vanished. The company wiped him from their website. A few blogs picked up whispers of the scandal, just vague enough not to cause a lawsuit, just pointed enough to tank his credibility. Dana, meanwhile, was placed on leave pending review. Cassie and I kept in touch. Not out of romance, just solidarity. She sent me a screenshot one night from an anonymous workplace forum. A former intern had written, "Kel thought he was untouchable. Finally, someone proved him wrong." I stared at that for a long time. Not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed what I already knew. Sometimes quiet revenge is the loudest kind. And sometimes the only way to get peace is to drag the truth into the light and let the truth do the work for you. It had been a few weeks. Long enough for the dust to settle, but not long enough for her shame to evaporate. The doorbell rang on a Wednesday evening, just as I was finishing dinner. I already knew it was her. Something in the air shifted, the kind of tension that comes before a storm. I opened the door and there she was. Dana. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a lazy knot. Wrinkled hoodie, sweatpants, flip-flops in the middle of October. She looked tired, raw in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not curated, not filtered, not enlightened. Just lost. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. Just waited. She looked past me into the house like she was searching for something familiar. Something still hers. "I'm staying with my sister," she said after a pause. "Kel blocked me. Deleted everything. I haven't heard from him in almost 2 weeks." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a him problem." She nodded. "Yeah, I know." Another beat of silence. "I've been thinking a lot," she said. "About everything. What I did. How I made you feel. I was chasing this idea, freedom, authenticity, whatever the hell it was, but I see now that I hurt the only person who ever actually showed up for me." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "And now that your backup plan ghosted you, I'm plan A again?" "No," she said quickly. "That's not what I meant. I just—" "Dana," I interrupted, "you had me. All of me. And you threw it away for a man who wears linen scarves and quotes Instagram poets." She laughed through her nose. A defeated, broken sound. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot more than that," I said. "But I'm not in the business of punishing people. Just protecting myself." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "Divorce papers. Signed." She held them out with trembling fingers. "I know it's over," she said. "But I needed to say it to your face. I'm sorry, Adrian. You didn't deserve any of it." I took the envelope, set it on the table beside me. "No, I didn't." She stared at her feet for a moment. Then back at me. "I miss you," she whispered. I looked at her for a long second. I saw the woman I married buried beneath layers of regret and disillusionment. But the truth was, that version of her didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never really had. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, stepping back into the house. She looked like she might cry. "Is there any chance?" I shook my head slowly. "No, there's not." Her lip quivered. But she nodded. "Goodbye, Adrian." And just like that, she turned and walked away, quiet footsteps down the front steps, fading into the chill of the night. I closed the door behind her. This time, it didn't hurt. This time, it felt like closure. I thought I'd feel emptier. That after everything, once the dust settled and Dana was finally gone for good, the house would feel too quiet. Too still. But it didn't. It felt like peace. There was no more guessing. No more pretending. No more watching the woman I loved become a stranger in her own skin. She took her chaos with her when she walked out the door, and in its place was something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. I spent the first few days just breathing. No phone buzzing at 1 a.m., no late-night calls I pretended not to hear, no speeches about expanding our container for love. Just silence. Honest, uncomplicated silence. I cleaned out the last of her things a few days later. The closets, the bathroom drawer, the little box of crystals she swore helped her align her energy. I boxed them up carefully, not out of sentiment but finality. I dropped them off at her sister's porch without a note. There was nothing left to say. Cassie and I stayed in touch. It was easy. No pressure, no agendas. Just two people who'd been pulled into the same orbit by the same manipulative storm. We got coffee a couple of times. She sent me an article about workplace power dynamics one night and ended it with, "Glad you burned the bridge before you collapsed on it." I laughed out loud when I read it. We weren't dating. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was nice, just having someone who saw through the same smoke and didn't try to call it art. I started reclaiming pieces of myself. I went back to the gym, dug up my old guitar from the attic. I fixed the back porch like I'd been meaning to for years. I planted rosemary in the yard again, not because it reminded me of Dana, but because I liked the smell when I walked past. One Saturday, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, the dog from next door lying at my feet, and thought, this is it. The calm I used to fight so hard to protect, this time it wasn't fragile. It wasn't built on compromise and denial and half-truths dressed up as evolution. It was real. People always say it takes a storm to clear the air. That some endings aren't losses, but exits. I never really understood that until now. Dana taught me a lot, even if it was unintentional. She taught me how dangerous self-discovery can be when it's really just selfishness in disguise. How easily trust can be manipulated by people who speak in lofty ideas but act in cowardice. How love, when bent out of shape to serve someone's ego, stops being love at all. But more than anything, she taught me the value of boundaries. And once I set mine, I didn't move them. I didn't need closure anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need an apology. All I needed was the life I'd forgotten I could live without her. And now? I had it.